Hello everyone, welcome to a special episode of Sweetcast. I've got a special guest today. I'm going to say it wrong, so...
It's cool, just Cal is fine. Cal is okay.
Cal, okay. Welcome, Cal.
Yeah.
So the reason this conversation got brought up is because I made the video about anime and what the American comic book, or not anime, manga, what the American comic book industry could learn from manga, because manga is doing a lot of things right. So yeah, you reached out to me, we talked a little bit and decided let's do an interview.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking to be on here, but I'm excited, so let's do it.
No, it's good to have you. I'm really appreciative of it. So first,
thank you.
First, a little bit about you. We talked about this a little bit before, but you know manga pretty well from an Asian perspective. Will you give us a little bit about your background?
So being someone from Southeast Asia, it's a very different historical culture when it comes to, pop culture, because we didn't have comics up and like locally available until I was almost like 20. So all we had was manga, because a lot of companies here in Southeast Asia, they have a lot of business deals with Japan and other Southeast Asian companies. So media-wise, we got way more manga and way more anime than comics, and we still kind of do.
Well, so the interesting thing to me is if you look at artists, like I just got finished doing a big artist search. There are a lot of fantastic comic artists and manga artists from Southeast Asia. It kind of shocked me when I was looking how many artists. So there's definitely a love for comics and manga. Now comics and I'm totally new to this. They're basically the same thing. Am I wrong?
Let's see. Well, when you look back at Osamu Tezuka, the god of manga, yes, he was inspired by Disney cartoons and American cartoons, and the roots of it is they're very similar because he was inspired by American culture at the time. But the route that manga has taken has made it, I think, an entirely different beast to what comic books have become. It's kind of like evolution, I would say. So, you know how they say that we all came from like some amoeba or thousands of years ago, but now we're entirely different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, little changes over time, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like at its root, we're talking about words and pictures, essentially.
Yes, of course.
And it seems like to me manga, it relies more on, it lets more of the pictures do the storytelling. I don't know, is that? Yeah,
definitely. It's because of the difference in storytelling when it comes to American story. Well, I don't want to say American, but like Western storytelling versus Asian storytelling, where we used to have all of these like huge murals in China. We used to have kabuki plays in Japan, that sort of thing, where the visuals was always more focused on than what they were essentially saying. Of course, the language evolved over the centuries, but you can clearly see historically the importance in Japan would be visually rather than in the literature of manga would be that. I'm trying to find the proper words. Oh God.
You're good.
I don't like being the one interviewed. Wow. Okay. If you want to get into the differences like between how the culture of manga would be, how these companies and the mangaka, this is what we call them, mangaka. So you have, I think over there you call them comic book pros. Over here they're called mangaka, or manga authors is the term that we use.
Okay. So even artists, like, do you distinguish between a writer and an artist?
Yes, they're two different things. Sometimes it can be, the mangaka can also be the all-around creator where they came up with a story and they also drew it. Like one is the guy who made One Punch Man, but you do have cases with, for example, like Bakuman and Death Note, where it was created by two different people.
Okay.
And one of them was the writer. Yeah, hold on, I'm trying to rack my brain here. So it was written by Oba Tsugumi and illustrated by Obata Takeshi. Yeah, and they also did Bakuman. So
okay, now definitely. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those two because I've watched the animes. I haven't read the.
Excellent.
I did look at One Punch Man because I was that might have been us where we talked. Yeah, you told me a little bit about the history of One Punch Man. So I looked up some of the artwork. And it's actually really inspiring to me. And for anybody that doesn't know, he wanted, so they call him One. He's the I guess the creator.
To this day, we don't know what he looks like and how old he is. We don't know anything about him. We just know that he calls himself One.
But he told a great story with some like pretty subpar art and put it on the internet.
That's being nice. They were very not good. They were extremely bad.
Crude.
But yeah. It's just that the mangaka in charge of Ice Shield 21, I don't know how he accidentally stumbled upon this, but he did. Is what in my circles, that's the story that everyone knows, is that he read a bit of it just because it looked really bad, and he was like, "Why are some of my friends talking about this like crude looking thing?" And he read it and he goes, "This is fantastic." And he was like, who is this man? I will make, I will redraw all of this for him for free. I'm like, who do I know in Shonen Jump? Let's get this published for real. Like,
which is amazing. I mean,
yeah.
You think of how many people are just putting out their own comics, web comics, and they'll look like garbage. But I mean, you got to start somewhere.
It's true.
But to have to have a big time professional come and just say like, all right, let's do this thing. It really is inspiring.
Also culturally, I would say like that's one of the aspects I find different when me not actually living in Japan or being Japanese, unfortunately, I'm like a weird mix of all sorts of parts of Southeast Asia. I don't even know. I'm going to probably have to take that weird lineage test to find out. But what me and what I and my friends say in our circles is that a mangaka, they tend to be very, very, very friendly toward each other. Whereas they'll do tributes and like, for example, Naruto is ending, right? Mm-hmm. And as a tribute to that, freaking Eiichiro Oda, the creator of One Piece, it was censored by it was slightly censored because something copyright, but if you were a fan, you would get it. He had Luffy eating ramen, and then he had Naruto on the other side of the table eating meat. And Nami was in the picture, and she kind of had a tray over Naruto's face, so you couldn't see it was actually him, but you could tell that this was him. And that was pretty. And he was like, "Hey, buddy, we've been through the same shit for so long. Your series is finally ending. I'm probably gonna go on for another 20 years, but here, have a doodle. You're one of my covers for today." Like, it's so nice. They're really, I don't know what it is. It could be a cultural thing where because you understand the struggles that someone else has to go through being in the same profession, it's more than civility sometimes, where they'll hug each other. Like, voice actors will hug each other. They'll fool around a bit. Like, sometimes they'll even end up on the same jobs together simply because they like the same manga at the same time, or simply because they were just the perfect fit. It's a very different culture from what I've been hearing from like the Western comic book culture with what's going on right now. Everyone's just fighting. Like, why? But you all have the same problems.
It has been pretty contentious lately, that's for sure. So I'm curious, have you done much reading of Western comics?
Okay, so this is where my little brother has become very handy sort of assistant when it comes to this, because I was really into manga growing up, and he was kind of like because he was my little brother, he wanted to be different from me, so he started getting into Marvel and DC like a lot. Like he has a Captain America like die-cast shield hanging over his bed, and I always joke, I'm like, you know, that thing's gonna fall off and kill you one of these days because it's just hanging right over your head, right? It's die-cast steel. So he does tell me where it's like, oh yeah, you know, they the new 52 when it came out, and he was talking about how it was a Korean artist and stuff like that. I'm like, huh. Where he's more into it than I am, because I just the subject matter could be okay. So manga takes a different approach to subject matters that sometimes could also be touched on in comics.
Sure.
Where everything is always put into perspective of the normal person, I find. Where even if it's like some shonen stuff, the struggles they go through are they're so human. Whereas in, I don't know, I find Justice League, I love Justice League. I watched the old cartoon when it came out, but I just always saw them as gods among people. Right. Instead of, say, Spider-Man, who is this just poor dude who just, oh my God, all he wants is to live a happy life. Why does he have to beat up this rhino guy?
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of people like Spider-Man, not only from the West, but here too, because he's actually the closest thing I think we have subject matter-wise to what like a manga feels like.
He's relatable.
Yes.
And even, and this is like going back to One Punch Man. Even though he's so, which is I guess part of the charm of it, he's so overpowered as a superhero.
Oh God, yeah.
But that's not what makes him an interesting character. It's how he's reacting to that, right? He's a superhero for fun. He's bored. You
do need. What I like about One Punch Man is that the more you know about anime and manga, the more enjoyable it is. So anyone can come in. This happens with a lot of mainstream manga and anime, is that they tend to be, anyone can come in, pick it up and read it and be like, this is great. But the further you go down the rabbit hole, to the point where you surpass being a weeb and become an otaku, you come back to stuff like this. I'm like, oh my God, this is way more genius than I thought. I see that trope and how you played on it. That's incredible. That's a pun. I didn't notice this before. Yeah.
That's
you
cool.
Build up on it.
Yeah.
It's the context.
That makes sense. So yeah, that's a good point too, because I think with Western comics, one of my gripes is that they get so confusing and the stories have gone for so long that you can't really like, oh, I like Spider-Man, but where do I start? And answering that question is really hard to do, other than I would say just start with Stan Lee and, you know, then from there figure it out.
That broke my heart this year when I heard that he passed and we had to report on it. And I had to be the, God, I don't want to get too personal, but I cried because I do the voiceovers and I do the live action camera reporting, and on camera we had to take it 3 times because I was like, I'm gonna cry. Like I was just like, in sad news, Stan Lee passed, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. It is sad
because it's empathy. I feel like also this is a lot of manga makes you very. When you grow up with manga, I find people who know more of it, they also seem to be more empathetic. I have no idea what Stan Lee's life was like. I have no idea, like, you know, all the struggles we went through. But when you can put yourself into that perspective of another person as a human being, that I think is what manga tries to always be. Sure, they put in the jokes. Sure, they put in the tropes. And the thing about the manga and anime culture is the fans, the actual fans, not like, you know, people who are elitist. I feel like those people are just trying to be better than everyone else. I don't know what the purpose of that is, but I do know that, you know, it's like, oh, but I want to be special. That some people are just like that, and that's just how they're going to be. Yeah. Shit, I like tangented too much. Where was I going with this? Hold on, I'm gonna gather my wits about me.
You're saying something about Stan Lee. You weren't sure what he's been through, but
Yeah, okay. So because they deliver the stories in such a way where, okay, well, yeah, here's this huge theme. How are we going to tackle it so that people actually like understand what I'm trying to get at?
Huh.
So they always try to start it from the simplest point. Something as complicated as morality in something as freaking dark as Death Note started with this kid who was bored and he was like, why are people awful? And that's a legitimate question where it's like, you know what, I don't know why people can be awful sometimes. And then he finds the book.
Yeah.
And it's all downhill from there. But they started it from such a human, such a normal perspective.
Yeah.
Where yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. I get excited about Death Note because
I'm sorry. I do too, because it was also a very peak weeb life for me. I was a Chunibyo at the time. I don't know if you know what that is.
nope. No idea.
There's a lot of terms for you to learn.
Yeah.
It's okay. So a Chuni, essentially, we call them Chunis. Chunibyo is like your middle. It's a Japanese thing, but I feel like it's more also an Asian thing. When you get into the whole pop culture thing, when you are in middle school age, you know, when you're like 11, like you think you're a witch. I don't know. That's what an American friend of mine said that, where she was like, when you're 11, you think you can do magic. Like if you're a girl, that's like what happens. I'm like, really? Sounds like a Chunibyo thing for us over here. Where like, I am the youth of the nation. I am the future. Therefore I'm special. And then you start pretending that you're a ninja because you watch too much Naruto.
Yeah. So, something you had mentioned that that manga tells stories in a different way. So I haven't actually read an entire manga. I've looked at one a little bit and read a little bit. My younger brother told me, "Hey, you should watch an anime." So he named a few and told me the premise, and Death Note was one. And I said, "That sounds okay. I'll try that." And I liked it. I loved it so much because the whole time you're dealing with this idea of what is right and what is wrong. And yeah, so I don't know. For me, it was awesome, but it's almost it's a tragedy, I guess, from my point of view. And in American comics or in Western comics, it almost seems like people shy away from writing tragic stories. Or there's got to be some kind of undermining of the tragedy.
Yeah,
it was.
I think they called it a eupocalypse, or Tolkien called it a eupocalypse or eucapocalypse or something. Where at the end it always has to be a happy ending or something like that.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a sad ending, or I don't know, but was it sad? Like I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
Oh my god, that's the thing about Death Note. I wanted him to win. I'm like, you are a horrible person, but I want you to rule the world.
That's what you struggle with, is because you think you.
I'm like, he had to die. The fact that he had to die makes me upset.
Yeah,
they do it so well, where they make you empathize with the most horrible people and kind of see stuff from their point of view. But at the same time, when you put it down, when you put down the manga, you can like zip back into your actual self and be like, man, that was fucked up. I shouldn't think like that.
Right. But then it scares you a little bit, and you think, well, what if I was rooting for somebody to just kill people? Am I capable of? I don't know. Like it makes you ask those deeper questions. So I really, really appreciated that about Death Note.
See, manga is about stories. It's not about heroes. I would say the bottom line of everything is it's not about heroes. It's about whoever the main character is.
Okay.
And whatever points you're trying to make is from the perspective of that main character and everyone else who interacts with them. So we don't normally have people coming in out of the blue. Dynamic entry is what we call it. It's that freaking trope where somebody just comes in like, who the frick is this? And, like, I wouldn't know about my main character. Who the heck are you? And I find a lot of people in my circles anyway, and I personally, I hate characters like that. Even in manga where I'm just like, excuse me, I was following this storyline. Who the heck are you? Don't interrupt. But it's become a trope now. where it's just one of those garbage anime tropes. I'm like, and here comes the person that's not supposed to be here. Who are you? You're going to be important later, but I just don't like how they shove you in here.
Right. Yeah. Another thing too is like coming from like I said, this is new to me, and so it's interesting to learn about. But it's the almost symbolic nature of how overreacting people are. I don't know, I gotta word that better. Like, something will happen and they'll pull this totally unnatural face, but you know exactly the emotion that they're expressing with this totally unnatural face, and so it's really interesting. A little different to get used to.
I think it's a cultural thing too, mostly from Japan. Like I said, their roots go back to the more visual is more important. Someone can say something completely awful, but their facial expression while they're saying it is the context of the situation. Essentially, revolves around their facial expression. If they say something like, oh man, I want to quote Tiny Tina, like burn all the babies. And then they have this ridiculous face with snot coming out and they look utterly ugly. I'm like, the context is they've played too many video games. They need to calm down. But if they say it with a completely straight face, that's like Light when he's just deadpan face and he says the exact same thing, like burn all the babies. Like, oh shit, oh no, bad, go back, don't say that. It all depends on the delivery.
So culture around manga. Western culture, at least here in America, I don't see people sitting at a bus stop reading a comic book. I don't see older people. I got my mom is 61. I convinced her to read a comic. But
you had to convince
it almost seems like it's just such a niche thing, and it's not something that there's almost like a stigma around it, like you're a nerd.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you get that same kind of feel, or is it a little bit different?
Okay, now see, this is where my background is a little bit different in this respect, because in Japan it's in the convenience stores. It's every week they have like a new one on the rack and you just pick it up and read it and put it back. So there it's just it's a manga. What do you want? They have ecchi in like a convenience store where it's not even a big deal. I went there and it was funny because my mom was like, oh, what is this? I'm like, it's an ecchi manga. And she goes, she's barely wearing anything. I'm like, that's the point. And my mom is Filipino.
Uh-huh.
Now that I can say, but she's very, the thing about Philippines is that we're very American in some respects and Asian in others. We're a little bit confused in that point. So her being the way she is, she just could not comprehend that some people just do this sort of thing. And I grew up with it, so I was just like, yeah. I mean, I couldn't comment. I was just like, do I tell her that this is normal, or do I just pretend I didn't hear her? Because I can't lie to her. It's very difficult for me to lie. I'm like, oh man, but I don't want to look like a freak. Okay, so that's the thing about anime and manga fans. We're very self-depreciating. We're not like, oh, you didn't read the latest issue. Like some people who I would call weeaboos are very much like that. It tends to be the Western people where they're super arrogant, like, this is not accurate. Where we're like, no, I think it's this, not that. Oh, really? This is what I heard. I'm like, no, it's this page, this chapter. Yeah, there you go. Here, let me help you, my friend. We know we're trash, and we can do nothing about it because we're already stuck here. So let's just embrace it. Wear a shitty shirt to a convention. Here we go.
Nice. Well, yeah, and that's I've heard. Around, I guess this is more anime, but there will be arguments over. I've just read this online: subbed versus dubbed. I don't know if you've heard about this whole thing.
Okay, this is not. I don't find it to be an Asian to Asian argument.
Yeah.
I've never met a friend who lives here or grew up here, or in. I've been to Singapore, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Vietnam, I've been as far as Philippines, and parts of Indonesia, Malaysia too. I've never met an anime fan or someone who says that they are that watches dub in English.
Huh.
And we do have like right now where I am living. I live in Indonesia. I'm going to move soon, possibly back to Singapore. I'm not sure, but that's why I say I'm Southeast Asian. I just don't care anymore. It's this general vicinity.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And that like, you watch dub or sub, and everyone's just like, is that even a question? Like, why are you, we're just like that. The question,
Yeah.
it's funny because it's garbage, and yet we still find such things offend us. We're like, what?
Right. Yeah.
Of course, you do have points of contention like Kingdom Hearts, where I'm like, but Sora sounds better in English. But the Disney characters in Japanese just sound awful.
Huh. Yeah, that's I don't know. People find strange things to be snobby about, and anybody that's watching,
Yeah.
I have no dog in this fight. To me, though, like I would want to hear the dubbed version, so I can watch the facial expressions and the
that's I find different too. I don't know why there's a difference in our reading pace. I don't want to say capacity because that's too far a stretch.
Yeah.
But I've always managed to read subtitles super quick and then watch what's going on in the scene.
Yeah,
I don't know why we can do that here.
Yeah.
And yet I've never met I've got friends in America, one who lives in Indiana, one who lives in Vermont, one who lives in Pennsylvania, another one who lives in San Jose, and the other one who lives in Virginia. No one has been, they're all like, yeah, but it's hard to read and watch at the same time. And I'm like, you have that problem? I can't comment because I'm like, I don't know what that's like. I don't know. And nobody around me here knows what that's like.
Yeah. And
so
I am a particularly slow reader, so that might compound my problem.
Now, this is again a cultural thing where in our, Asian schools, stereotypes tend to not be wrong. They just aren't the whole picture.
They're
what I was taught.
Yeah, based on some kind of actual observation.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, that's a stereotype. I'm like, why is stereotype suddenly a taboo word to say over in the West? Over here, it's, okay, here's the past behaviors that we've observed, and this is what we expect. And if it's like almost like a science experiment where, of course, you have to make assumptions. It's like saying you can't assume it's going to be a sunny day if you're planning to go fishing.
Right. And you're happy to be surprised, right? If something's different.
Yeah.
It's not
very much so.
Yeah, not inherently wrong just to have some kind of assumption. I think we're lying to ourselves if we say we don't look at the world with some stereotypes. That's just human nature.
That's the thing, though. I feel like I'm going to say a lot of things that Asians find okay, but Americans are like, oh, this is blasphemy. And I'm like, oh. Yeah. That's why I was kind of nervous to be on here. I'm like, I don't know, because it just could be a difference in culture.
Yeah. You know what? You're good, though, because that's, the whole, one of the reasons my channel exists. There's this whole debate happening here on, how you're allowed to think about things. I think you're in good company.
But here's a point I do want to make, is that manga and anime are very much intertwined in this culture, which is when you say, I like anime, usually that means you read and you play also JRPGs, just anything Japanese media.
Okay.
But your primary is like anime or manga. Because in Japan, what they do is that they have mangaka making manga. They publish it, and there's these weekly magazines. Now, the most well-known one is the Shonen Jump magazine. Readers of these magazines, whether it be like a seinen, a shonen, a shoujo, a josei. I don't think josei is actually a real genre, but it should be. They can vote. They can be like, yeah, this manga is great. And enough votes, the higher you are on that list, the more chances you get at an anime deal.
Oh, I like that.
So they're not making manga. They're not making anime and manga. They're not making anime that people don't already want to see most of the time.
So anime is really it's I guess like the cream of the crop from.
It's your
manga.
trophy.
Yeah.
As a mangaka, it's your trophy. It's people liked what I did enough to get me an anime. Like that's how you know you've made it. I know, like in online media, you've made it when you have fan art and people trying to steal your work.
Yeah.
In the anime manga world, as a mangaka, you know you've made it when you get your own anime deal. Like your entire story gets an anime deal. That's it. You've made it. You're in the pantheon of the gods.
Yeah. I do have one more question though. I'm curious.
Sure.
You know that I've watched One Punch Man and I've watched Death Note. What do you have a suggestion for me for manga that I should sit down and?
So I'm just gonna. Oh man, I'm gonna stereotype you right now. Like, so are you?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna assume that you're a dude just by the sound of your voice.
Oh yes, yes. Your assumption is correct.
I don't know. I've specifically been very much like, yeah, little Asian girl here. But are you white? I don't know.
I am, yes, as white as can be.
Okay, I just see you as a lollipop. Like that's
right.
It's a thing that we have in our little manga anime culture. Like your icon is what you are.
Right.
You are lollipop pie. Well, if you've read Death Note and you want to learn about the processes of behind the scenes to making a manga, of course, this is not going to be like from a professional standpoint. But this is very much like as an ordinary person becoming a mangaka, because that's just how manga themes be. Definitely recommend Bakuman.
Bakuman. Okay, I have heard of that.
Yeah, same people. A couple of guys who did Death Note. The art, you will be surprised because this illustrator he really adapts to the new more silly theme. Like it's very cute compared to Death Note. I was surprised this was an artist.
Huh. Okay. All right. I will give it a try. Well, thank you so much for being willing to do this interview. Yeah.
Sure.
We'll be in the touch in the future for sure. And just to everyone watching, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. What do you think Western comics could learn from manga? Thank you.
Yeah, if you have food, it'd be cool if they could ask like maybe a few questions like to the weird Asian girl that maybe people don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, ask some questions because we'll have Cal on again for sure.
All right.
sa, 皆様、じゃ、またね。
Bye everyone.